infinite complacency, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
So, Ron, I know that you've got some things to discuss with me that occurred when you were younger. And I'd like to, if we could, start with the when and where and go from there. Now, the where can be as specific or non-specific as you like. So, wherever you wanted to start with that stuff, go right ahead.
Okay. Well, it's a little bit strange because there's 3 events, and 2 of them were pretty close together when I was around 7 or 8, and they happened in Missouri. And the 3rd one did too, but it was about 7 years later. I didn't remember these things until almost 20 years later. I started having like these little episodes. I don't know how you describe it, but like little quick flashing memories would come through my brain, and I didn't really know what to make of it. This is probably like around 96 at this point. And these other things happened back in like 74, 75. And I didn't really know. I was just kind of ignoring it because it was little blips of my grandparents' house. And finally, I don't know, this was around the era of X-Files, and I had a friend ask me where I worked if I would record it. I had never seen it, didn't know anything about it. I said, yeah, I'll do that for you. It's back when, you had to like record things on VCR tape. So I ended up watching it and liked it, and I thought it was a pretty cool show. And so the next week I went to watch it, and they had this episode where they showed kind of what now is everyone realizes sort of a stereotypical gray alien guy. And it was like something just like exploded, like this memory that I'd been getting flashes of for off and on for about a year. It was suddenly like it was all presented it was like a complete memory. It was really weird. And so I started really sitting there trying to take this in, like what am I remembering here? Because I had completely blocked it out somehow. And at first I thought maybe it was a dream and stuff, but this wasn't happening at night, and I never remember my dreams anyways. So it was pretty trippy. And I started thinking about this more and more, and it was just, the whole thing was right there. And what it was, again, when I was around 7 or 8, and probably around 1974, 76 timeframe, my real father would get me every other weekend. He'd take me back to his place. And my grandparents had, he'd leave me at my grandparents all the time. And they had this farmhouse where they had hogs and they grew all kinds of stuff out there. But I would be left all the time out there just by myself because they were all off doing stuff, whatever they did. So I spent a lot of time by myself around this farm. And there was, again, I've never talked about this to anybody, so I'm a little nervous getting it out. But what happened was I was out playing in the front yard one day, and I'd be out there with my little cowboy boots, cowboy hat, and my little 6-shooters. And next to their house was kind of a wooden garage that didn't have doors on it, that they could pull cars in, and that's where they kept like freezers, their meat and stuff like that. And it was only like 10 yards from the house, and there was a little driveway, and I was out in front in the grass playing, and I just suddenly had this feeling that something was like looking at me, or there was something there. And I turn around, and it's, again, this is strange even saying this out loud to people. I've only thought about this in my head for all these years, but I look over, and there's this figure, like there, like right in the driveway, and kind of right in front of the garage. And he's a little smaller than me. Like, I mean, I was probably 7 or 8, so I was probably only like maybe 4 feet tall. So this thing would have been a little bit smaller. But this X-Files episode like shot this whole thing back into my head when I saw the little thing on the show, but it didn't look quite like that. It was different. It wasn't gray. It was kind of beige, sort of, I don't know, almost flesh colored, but it was tiny. It was only probably like maybe 3.5 feet tall. If I was around 4 feet, I would say it was maybe like 3.5 feet. But it had the like upside down teardrop eyes that were very dark. And what's amazing is after all these years of never even remembering this whole thing, every little detail was like right there in front of me all of a sudden, and I could remember my feelings and what the thing kind of was doing, and it was all just I don't even know how to explain it. It was very weird to me. So I'm looking at this thing, and I'm scared because I don't know what the heck it is. At this point in my life, all I had ever done was play outside. I mean, it was the 70s. We didn't have internet and any of that stuff, and I didn't watch a lot of TV. So I had no idea what this thing was, and I realized that I just need to get away. And so in my 7-year-old brain, I thought, I'm going to run in the house, which seems funny to me now as an adult. I think I'm going to run in the road, try to fly down a car or something, but I ran in the house instead. And as I'm going to the house, I'm trying to go as fast as I can. It felt like I was in like a weird bubble. Like it was kind of like hazy. Like I was running, but I wasn't going very fast. And again, it's kind of hard to explain. There's movies now where they have these superheroes. They're speedsters, and they always show them like in slow motion, and they're like running around people, like poking them and stealing hats and things.
Right.
It was kind of like that. It's kind of like the only way I can really describe it. So I'm getting close to the front door. I made it to the front door. I opened the front door, and I turned around just to kind of see. I look over where I thought I was, but instead it was like right behind me, and it was still just not moving. I never saw it move. It was just like standing there, like looking at me. I could see it closer this time, and then I remember just losing it at that point, like and so I took off, and I thought, where can I hide? Because this thing was clearly following me, and I thought, again, as an adult, it seems like a crazy idea, but I thought I'll hide in the basement because in Missouri, everybody has a basement because of tornadoes and stuff. So I went downstairs, a bunch of furniture and boxes and crap down there, and I just jumped behind some stuff, and I'm just like staring up at the stairs, just waiting to see if he's going to figure out where I went, or her, or whatever it was. And I don't know, like maybe a minute or less went by, and I'm thinking for a second that, okay, it's gone. And so I'm staring at the top of the stairs, and then like the whole atmosphere kind of, I remember, changed there in the room, and I knew it was coming. And I know this sounds probably so crazy, but I'm looking, and I'm waiting, and now I'm like locked. I'm like frozen stiff, and my eyes are all giant. I'm sure I'm looking up there, and it wasn't a light that I saw coming or anything like that, but there was like some sort of like energy, or it's hard to describe a lot of this stuff, but it was like something was starting to come down, and it was coming through the door, and I'm frozen, and I'm just scared to death. And before I see it, it's like my memory just stops right there. Like it ended at that point. So that was this whole memory that just like came shooting back into my head. It was like it had just been stuck, and it was wanting out or something all this time, and finally, I guess I had enough little weird triggers that brought it back. Sometimes I think I'm just crazy, but I remember it vividly, and I think something weird happened. I've gone back and forth on it, but I always come back to like, I don't remember my dreams. I'm like a person that doesn't remember them. And this all happened like in the daytime. I was remembering all these things in the daytime. And then, so I don't think it was a dream. I'm confident that this actually happened. And I don't to this day know what it happened at the end or anything, but yeah, that was my first story that I've never told anybody.
No, man, even just to think of, you being a kid and sitting down there in the basement, which is already a place that most kids don't really want to go. But I could see where in your mind you're going, well, this may be a good idea right now, even though that would usually be the last place I would go. So did this, in fact, come back in kind of in bits and pieces, or this whole thing came back to you?
Yeah, that's what was strange was this, I would say maybe even a year from getting these little, like instant little, like I'm in the front yard playing and then next time it would be like, I'm scared of something, and it would be just these really quick, like in and out. It kind of like when you wake up from a dream and you really want to remember it, but you can't, it's there, but it's like, it's there and it's gone. And that was happening over maybe a year. Almost like you're sitting in front of a window and it's got curtains and the window's kind of blowing the curtains a little bit. You can kind of see trees or something or a road, but you don't get a whole picture. And then finally you sit there and you're like, you just get up and you like pull them open and it's like, it's all there. And that's kind of like what happened. It was like I was getting little glimpses of something that I couldn't really understand, though I knew there was something there, an event that I wanted to remember, but it just wasn't clear until I saw this thing on TV that was very close to what I saw, and it just like it snapped it all out, and it literally happened in like an instant almost. And I must have spent an hour just trying to like go over and over in my head, like it was all there. It was like this new story almost to me that I had forgotten all these years.
You know what? I think that a lot of people had that experience when Whitley Strieber's Communion came out with the cover with the alien bust. His face was on the cover of that book, and I think a lot of people had the same reaction that you did when you saw that one on the television. Right. Like things just kind of, these memories got kind of jogged and came to the surface. So not nice ones. Yeah. Not nice memories at all for a lot of people.
Yeah, I've never known what to do with it. I was afraid that if I ever mentioned it to anybody, they would just say, "Oh, you're watching too many, sci-fi shows," which I never did up to that point. Like I said, the X-Files episode kind of brought it out to me, but I never watched the show. I was always a big Bigfoot fan since I was a little kid. I don't know why, but I locked into that. I used to read all the books from like the earliest age I can remember. But I was never an alien guy, or I didn't watch TV shows back in those days of it. So, and I was a pretty active person in my 20s. I had a full-time job and, girlfriend, and I was out dancing all the time. And I just living a normal life. So I didn't even watch a lot of TV then. So this, honestly, when I saw it, it was like the first time I'd seen that image that I can recall, on the TV show. So I don't know, to this day, I'm a pretty black and white person. I come from like a tech support background. That's what I did at this software company, and pretty much a black and white, person. And it's difficult to kind of sort these sort of things out when you have that kind of brain, because it's like, it doesn't compute. It doesn't make sense then. So I've been kind of looking, I think, for an outlet for a long time to bounce this stuff off my head, because I've just been holding it in for a long time. So this is great. I appreciate you letting me come on to talk about this.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, don't worry, there's a lot of people out there that are in that same boat, that they haven't told anybody, and they kind of want to, but they know for the most part what will happen. And you're not wrong. Even to this day, I tell people what I do, And, the experiences that I've had, there haven't been many, but everybody kind of has their catalyst and their interest when it comes to these subjects. And I still get the looks, oh, you do a paranormal podcast. Okay, that's different. I'm like, yes, it sure is.
Yeah, this is a good example of what we're just talking about there, because I texted my mom last night, because one of the other stories I was going to tell you about was when we were in a house that we rented briefly, and there was weird things that went on there. And so I sent her a text. I was, first off, I thought I'd do some research on the house, but this was like in '82 when we rented it, and so I didn't think she'd remember, which she didn't. She said if I drove by, I might be able to find it. But but I told her, I said, and I was nervous to even say anything to her, because I've never said anything to my mom or anybody about this stuff. So, but I asked her, I said, do you remember me ever saying anything about that house being weird, or me hearing things, and I said there was a lot of scary stuff. And I thought I heard footsteps, and there was nobody there. And she sent a text back to me, all in caps. "Oh, my son, you are so funny." So I'm like, that's kind of why I never told anybody. So I was always afraid I'd get like that sort of reaction to this kind of stuff.
Right.
So,
but I will say though, Ron, that a lot of times the parents, and I've heard it over and over again, either both or one of them, they're trying to protect their kids, right? And they don't want to scare their kids. So even if they're experiencing things at the very same time that maybe you were, they'll never even admit to that. Even years later, I've heard that once everybody's got their own families and they're doing their own thing, the guest, who would be the child in the situation, would bring it up later to their parents. And even to this day, and the guest would go, I mean, as a child, they had to be hearing some of these things or experience. They had to have. How could they not have? And maybe they didn't. But for the most part, they will stay in that space of denial for, the entire time. And that may not be the case, of course, with your mother. Maybe she really didn't experience it, and she thinks it's a little odd that you're bringing it up. That very well could be. That happens too. But there is that other side of it where they're going to stay in that space of denial.
Yeah, and I asked her a couple other questions about the place, which when I get into that part, I'll tell you kind of her answer on that. But I don't know. It seems like most people I've encountered kind of, I don't know if they're afraid to have their minds open like that. Mm-hmm. I've never really been afraid, to hear people's stories, and just, some things maybe I decide that might be made up or whatever. But I don't know. I think that we have so many decades now in just the modern time of stories, and we have great pictures and we have videos sometimes, that it's really hard to dismiss all of it out of hand. I think there's just too much for too long, and not everybody's crazy and misjudging things. I think that's my opinion. And I think people, if they just would have an open mind about this stuff, they might realize that there's more out there than I think we know in the world we know that's around us right now, right in front of us.
No, absolutely. And it's, of course, paradigm shifting when you have these kinds of experiences. Like if you heard me on another show, most likely I was talking again about my shadow person experience, but it's really the only thing that I have. I mean, not the very only thing, but that's like my big thing that I saw, when I was younger. Right. And it made me realize, okay, it's not just the world around us that we can see and touch and feel. There are other things that sometimes literally and figuratively are running parallel right next to us, and we just don't always know that they're there. So, and when you have that realization, it is scary and it is very jarring. And we keep going. We kind of maybe get over it is not the right term, but we just keep plugging away. What else are you supposed to do? But it's always there. Once that is shattered, and that, you can't go back, and you can't deny it, because you're like, well, I know what I experienced. So sorry about the way that you feel. I understand, but I know what happened to me.
Exactly. I think that's why I'm definitely as open-minded as I am to other people's stories or watching a show on, a streaming service that I catch and listen to people saying that they saw this and saw that, because they were brave enough to get out there and stay on camera, and I've been holding it in, but I can relate to them really well. I think that's why I've been drawn to all these kind of shows over the years, is because I've been there, and I have had a strange thing that didn't make any sense. I get it.
No, well, and you're very brave for doing this, by the way. Doing this, even just having this talk, and it's just you and me talking, of course, right now, but, the knowing that other people are going to hear it. And even just talking to me, I totally get it. It's probably something you've been thinking about doing for a long time, but once you're actually saying it out loud, I remember the first time I told my shadow person experience, I was very, very nervous. I'm actually really terrified about it, because I'm like, I've never actually spoken this whole thing in order out loud. It's clear as a bell in my memory, but that's a whole different ball of wax when you're talking about it with somebody. So you're very brave for doing this, by the way. Even though there's no camera, doesn't matter. It's still a big deal. Well, Ron, what's the next event that we're going to be talking about?
Yeah. So the other one was the next two are kind of similar, but they're different from the first one. That one actually, I had a visual on a figure, and the other two were more, I don't know what to make of these either, but they were different. I was my natural father, who like I said would pick me up every other weekend. I would spend that weekend with him, usually my grandparents at some point. And I think they were kind of close together, but I think this one came after that one I just described, because he had purchased this really old 2-story farmhouse further out of town, kind of off in the middle of nowhere. I think just because he had a lot of horse trailers and horses and a lot of big equipment, I think it provided him some more space. But I think he's planned to live there. So we drove there one weekend. Again, I was same age range, probably 7 or 8. And so we drove out of this place. And my first impression was, oh, this is cool, because it was there was a couple of big barns, and I was a very outgoing kid. I loved exploring and riding my bike all over town, my big wheel, whatever it was. And so my first thought was, cool, there's a lot of stuff for me to investigate and check out. So we get there and we go inside this kind of, it was a pretty big house, big farmhouse. And we go in, and he's telling me, I bought this, and I think he said he was going to live there. It's been a long time now, because I'm 55, so this is like 45 plus years ago. But he's like, well, I'm going to show you your room. So we go up the stairs, and there's a bedroom there that we go into, and it's pretty good size, wooden floors and stuff. And he's got a bunch of my toys I used to play with. I loved horses, so I had a whole bunch of small horses that I'd play with for hours on end. And he had them like kind of in there. There's no bed or anything yet. It was just a bunch of toys. And I know it sounds weird now, but he would just take off for hours on end and go do auctions and things and just leave me places. So he's like, I got to go do some things, and I'll be back in a while. And I was kind of used to it. So I was like, all right. And so he went downstairs, and the window in the bedroom looked out over the driveway, so I could see him drive away. And I was like, oh, all right. So I just started playing with my stuff, and I kept kind of hearing something. There was where the door was to go in the bedroom, there was a closet about 3 or 4 feet to the side of it, and it sort of opened a few feet, not all the way, but kind of open. And I kept hearing something I thought was in the closet. And I just would look over and then look away and keep playing, and finally it was like, I realized there's something, because I grew up in Missouri, and most of my relatives were farmers and stuff. And so most of the houses were old and creaky, and there's always a lot of weird sounds. And when you grow up with that, it doesn't seem scary, you just know it's an old house, I guess. So I never was scared of that kind of stuff, but it kind of went from like, okay, I'm hearing like creaky house sounds, to like there's something in that damn closet that's I think there's something alive in there or something. And so I'm kind of staring in there, and it's dark. I couldn't see in it, but I could see the opening, and I'm just kind of staring in there, and this, again, I grew up as an outdoor kid, so I've been around every animal practically you can imagine. I chased raccoons everywhere. We had coyotes all over. Pretty much any animal in Missouri, I was pretty familiar with it. We had lots of dogs and cats, but there was something different about this. It was almost like a growling, but it was a weird energy sort of thing. And I knew that it wasn't. I just kind of had this feeling like I knew it wasn't an animal, but there was something that I wasn't familiar with that seemed angry, like really angry, and it was kind of getting more intense as I'm standing there, to the point where I'm starting to get kind of scared now. I'm like, what is this thing? Is this thing coming out? What? And I couldn't see anything. There was like no shape, none of that, but there was clearly something in there that it was like it was, I don't know how to describe it. Kind of like it was like charging itself up, like it was like just kind of increasing intensity, to the point where it's like, okay, I need to get out of here, I think, because it was really, I started to panic because I was feeling like the first story, I was scared this thing wanted something from me and he was trying to find me, or this thing seemed like it was angry at me, like it wanted to hurt me. And again, I don't know how I knew this as a kid, but that's the memory I have of this. And I just instinctively thought I just need to get out. But this damn closet was like 3 feet from the door I would have to run through. And like, this thing's going to get me if I try to make a run for it. So I'm sitting there just like trying to decide. But this energy, this darkness that seemed to be just like enveloping the room was getting, I'm like, so I had to make a decision. I'd either sit here, I knew this thing was going to be out at some point, or I'd make a run for it. So, excuse me, so that's, finally, I just kind of crouched up a little. I remember in my little kid brain, I'm like, okay, I get like a running position. So I kind of got there, and then I just went for it. And I sprinted to the door, and I could just, as I got closer to where the closet was, I could just feel like this, like it's like this, I don't know, it's like somebody was throwing a blanket on me. It was like I felt sluggish and hot and like, it's hard to describe, but I went through the door, and then I had never been in this house before. So I realized I didn't remember where I came from because it was a pretty big stairs. So like thinking the wrong way. And finally I realized so I'm running back and forth, and this thing's like, there's like this, it wasn't like voices or anything. But it was like something was almost saying something, but it was just, I couldn't make out what it was. But there was just this overwhelming feeling of just dread and just evilness that I'd never, ever, to this day in my life, I've never felt anything like that. I've never been as scared as I was in that moment, ever, before or since. So I go downstairs running for my life, and I sprinted finally out of the house. I sprinted, it was probably about 75 yards from the house to the edge of the highway. And I ran all the way there as fast as I could. And I stopped and I turned around, and I finally looked, and nothing was behind me. And I could see the house, and I could see the window, and I could see like, it was almost like smoke or something. Like it looked like it was kind of almost like there was a fire in there. And I just sat there staring at that house. I'm like, I'm not taking my eyes off this. And I must have sat there for a couple hours before my dad finally came back, and he was kind of mad at me. He's like, you weren't supposed to leave the room until nothing. And I was like, I'm never going in the house again. I remember saying that to him. I said, I remember kind of conveying that there was something in there that scared the heck out of me. And I remember him just seeming irritated at me. But I think we were going somewhere else at that point. And I don't remember him ever taking me back to the house after that. I don't know what he did with it, but I don't remember ever going back. But yeah, that was a super weird experience. Again, I can't really explain. I don't know what happened.
Wow. So he had bought that house, and then you never went back there again?
Yeah, I never had really good relationship with my natural father. I spent every other weekend with him. So we never really talked much, even when he would pick me up.
Right.
I was just more like a farmhand. It felt like usually I've been doing a lot of chores and work and stuff. So once I was old enough to kind of, decide I didn't want to spend time with him anymore, I've barely seen the guy in all these years. So I've never gone back and talked to him about that whole thing. And I've actually, now that I've been thinking about all this stuff again, I was actually thinking he's 80, I think now. I was thinking about reaching out to him while he's still around and asking him, like, what the deal was with that house, why he bought it, because I remember him telling me that he sold it, and it wasn't long after that. So I don't know if he experienced something. I don't know, but I've been thinking about reaching out to him, and cause I haven't talked to him in a while now, and getting his take on it, and maybe he can fill in some gaps about that. But I never went back.
Yeah, I mean, that was the first thing that came to my mind, because just like we were just talking about with parents trying to protect their kids and their experiences is
right.
I mean, you have an adult that just bought a house and you have a kid that says they're scared. Well, kids say they're scared all the time. And the parents usually go, oh, stop it. Get out of here. Well, just like what your mom did with the text message, right? I mean, that's a big deal to buy and sell things. So I do wonder then if he had his own experiences, and although he seemed irritated, maybe he went, oh crap, it's not just me. My son is experiencing stuff too. This energy, Ron, that you mentioned, because you mentioned in the very first story when you were hiding in the basement, you said there was also kind of an energy that you felt it kind of, make its way towards you there.
Yeah. And
this story also has this kind of energetic feel to it, like it was charging up. Very interesting description, by the way. Do you feel that those at all would be one and the same, this energy type feeling, or you feel these are, and I'm just talking about the energy, not the experience, but was it the same feeling at all?
Not really, because I did think about that. Again, I have never really sat and put as much thought into this as I have before. I knew I was going to talk to you. So yesterday I was kind of trying to piece it together. I kind of wrote down a couple little notes of things, and I was thinking the same thing actually. It's like, this has been some kind of thing chasing me around, my childhood, but it seemed like it was two separate things the more I really thought about it, because I don't remember a lot of stuff from being a kid, just little things, but these weird experiences I really remember very well, and the feeling was really very different in the stuff at this house he had bought. It was like something just wanted to just devour me. I can't even really explain it. It was like something wanted to do harm to me, and it was almost like it had been waiting for me, and it was like getting ready to make its move or something. Whereas the other thing was very scary too, but I didn't feel like this thing wanted to like end me. It felt like it wanted me for something, and I didn't want it to want me. I just wanted to get away from it. But the second one, it was just a full on like darkness kind of evilness that I had never really experienced up to that point. I was only 8 or 9, or 7 or 8, or probably. So very difficult to. But I think it was two separate things.
No, I appreciate you going down that road, because those are the kinds of questions that they're not going to have an answer, really. It's just kind of to maybe jog some things around. The smoke that you said that you saw, that was just in your bedroom window when you turned around and you looked at that house.
Yeah, because the window, there wasn't curtains because he just moved in. There really wasn't much of anything there, so there was no curtains. I could see, and the window had been open because I remember I opened it so I could watch him drive away. So it was open, and when I was standing on the curb, I remember kind of squinting because I was a little ways away because I was watching to see if something was going to come out and come after me, and nothing did, but I was really zoned in on that window, and I kept like, it was like pitch black in there. Like I couldn't, it was daytime, but I couldn't, like, some of the downstairs windows, I could kind of see in them a little bit. Like there was maybe kind of a blurry, it was blurry a little bit, but it was light enough where you could see in them. But this one was like really dark. It was like, yeah, but I could see, like, when I was kind of staring really intently, but it looked like it was moving, like at times, like the darkness was like shifting, just barely, almost kind of like smoke, I guess, but it was just jet black.
Whatever you were seeing moving was darker than the darkness around it.
Yeah. Because I couldn't see past it at all. It was just like solid dark. And I just remember thinking, I didn't think it was smoke at the time. I didn't think, oh, it's a house on fire or anything like that. I just thought, what is that? There's something very super dark that seems like it's transitioning a little bit here and there. And I was like, I'm at that age, even at this age, if that had happened to me for the first time, I don't know what I'd be thinking. I think I'd be very confused and trying to make sense of it. And all I knew was I just in my little brain, I just kept thinking, I just need to keep eyes on this situation and not look anywhere else. I literally sat there. I just remember sitting on the ground, the dirt road, staring up there for hours and not hardly blinking. I was like, I don't even want to blink. I don't want this thing to, like, because I just felt like it could, like, cover ground quick. I just had this feeling that it might be, if I looked away too long, it was going to be on me. But it seemed like it was stuck in the house. I remember thinking that over time, over the couple hours, I'm like, I don't, it's like it can't leave. Like, so I started feeling a little safer the longer I was there. I do remember that. But I was like, there's something in there.
But it was moving because you were waiting for your dad for quite a long time. It was moving that entire time.
Yeah, I don't remember it. It looked the same from the time I sat down to the time he got there. I don't remember it looking any different at all. And then we drove away, and I just I don't remember being quite so happy as when we got away from that place. But yeah, it kind of stayed the same the whole time. That was a really weird experience. I mean, I was just a little kid. I was like, why are you? What's going on? That one I didn't really forget about. That one I just hadn't thought about it in a really long time. When the other thing that I told you kind of just got triggered back into my memory, I started thinking about other weird things, and then I remembered. I'm like, yeah, there was that other weird thing at my dad's house he bought, and I started thinking about that. So I hadn't forgotten about it. I just put it out of my memory for a long time. The other one, it was like something like had locked it away. I don't know how to describe that either, really, but it was like in jail, that memory, and somehow managed to bust out. So kind of different experiences.
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of where I was going. They seem like completely different experiences. Are they tied in? Who knows? But you mentioned that the first one seemed kind of locked away or whatever it was, and it's not funny, but it's funny because of the fact that you basically saw a classic alien. No, it was not gray, but a classic quote unquote gray alien. And then that is the memory that was locked away, which we hear about all the time, right? They're called, they screen memories, or they just wipe your memory altogether. Yeah.
Which, again, I became this big X-Files fan. I started getting a little more into paranormal stuff. I started getting a little more interested in it kind of through that show. And so that kind of did make me think. I'm like, maybe, there are a lot of crazy things they did on that show. But I started thinking, like, well, maybe there is something to this, because I've watched so many shows now on people being abducted and whatnot, and different things that supposedly happened to them, and I started thinking maybe there is something to that. Maybe these people aren't crazy, because maybe that is what happened to me. Maybe I just got a little window of the beginning of it. I don't know what happened after, I kind of the memory stopped. But yeah, I started thinking that maybe that's just a thing that happens. So yeah.
Do you think that you would ever want to find out what happens, in that basement?
I would. I'm not, I'm a kind of a crazy person. I've always been super adventurous. I used to race super bikes, and I've done all kinds of crazy things and injured myself a lot over the years doing it. But I've always been a pretty tough person, so I'm not afraid of it. I have thought about, like regression stuff. That sounded really interesting to me, where they can, try to jog, memories and whatnot from you. It's a little scary to think what might come out, but it is something I would do. I wouldn't be scared of it. I'd just be nervous what I might find out, so.
And honestly, Ron, I'm still surprised by the fact that you never saw that house. I mean, you had just seen it for the first time. This goes down, and then boom, it's just one and done. The house gets sold or whatever happens, but you never even see that place again. There has to be something there with your dad. That would be interesting to, if you would ever be comfortable enough to maybe ask him, about that and broach that subject with him.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing, because I have thought about that the last few days, like, maybe reaching out to him and seeing what his thoughts were about that time. And it is a little weird, because we haven't had the greatest relationship, and I have a stepdad that basically raised me, and he's my dad. And so I'm like, how would I go about that? Because, I haven't talked to him now for a few years, and he, ringing him up and saying, hey, long time no see.
Right.
Like, by the way.
Actually, I called about something really specific, Dad.
Yeah. So, but honestly, just, it feels like something interesting is happening here with my life all of a sudden, because, it was almost like, I don't know, I'm starting to believe more as I get older that there is kind of a rhyme or reason with strange things. They're not always just happen chance. And it kind of seems like maybe there's a little path I'm on right now, with happening to watch this one show that led me to this guy, that led me to this guy, to led me to you. And it's got me thinking a little bit more about this, more than just like, okay, recalling the stuff like I'm doing with you and talking about it, but I'm kind of starting to think more about like the research end of it almost, which is why I reached out to my mom last night to ask her about the third one, about that house. So it's like something's pushing me. It almost feels like down this road to sort of unravel stuff, and that feels like that's part of that path is reconnecting with my natural father and seeing if he has any info on that. And I'd also like to research a couple of these other houses. All three of these houses, by the way, they're all different ones. They're all like really old Missouri houses. The one my dad bought, that 2-story thing, this thing was probably like 100 years old when he bought it. It seemed ancient. My grandparents' house, they had been there for a long time. It had been the family for a long, long time. It's just an old wooden, farmhouse. And the one that my parents rented in the 3rd story, this thing had to be super old too. It was very old, creaky, wooden house. So that's the one thing they all kind of have in common, is that they are all very old, and that could lend itself to strange events.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, yeah, and if you're segueing there, go right ahead with the third house.
Yeah. So the third one. So I lived in Missouri. I was born and lived there till 1976. I remember the bicentennial year. We moved to Tempe, Arizona, and I lived there for a year or a couple of years. And then my mom decided to move back to Missouri, and I was getting ready to be a freshman in high school. So we moved back, and we were moving into this town, which sounds funny to a lot of people. It's a town in Missouri called Peculiar, Missouri. So we were going to be moving to Peculiar, but the house wasn't quite ready yet. So they had to rent a house, and we rented a house in this other small town called Butler. And it's a really small town, and this house that they picked out to rent for like a month or two, I think. My mom last night, she said it was only like a month that she thought that we lived there, or 6 weeks. So they rented this house, and we moved in. And I'm older now, 15 years old. I'm a football player, wrestler. I think I'm a tough guy. So I'm not like scared of stuff. But this house freaked me out. So it was a pretty good sized house, and it was 2-story also. And my parents decided they were going to sleep in the downstairs master bedroom. And then I think there was one other bedroom in the bottom. And my brother, who was about 4 years younger than me, he was going to use that one. And so there was like 4 bedrooms upstairs, and they're all like really big rooms, big, wooden floors and stuff. And it was old and creaky and all that. So they put me up there all by myself. But I didn't even think anything of it at the time, to be honest. I thought it was kind of a cool house. It seemed like it when we moved into it. And I was at the far end. I like almost right off the bat, we went to bed one night, and I don't know, the first or second night I was there, I remember hearing somebody. I was falling asleep. I remember like hearing somebody walking around like near me, and I kind of looked around, and it was dark, and I was like, Dad, I thought maybe Dad was going to check on me or something. No one's answering me, and I could clearly hear footsteps like near my bed, like clomp, clomp. I was like, who is that? And I thought my brother was like, maybe, we used to play tricks on each other. And I thought, okay, he's trying to scare me, or he's doing something stupid. But no one's answering. And I was like thinking, well, what is happening here? And so I keep hearing these footsteps. And I finally, I get up, and I sit up, and I'm looking really hard in the darkness, but I can't see anything. But it feels like somebody's there. And I keep thinking, somebody's hiding and trying to scare me. They're just messing with me. And I'm walking around. I walk kind of up and down. I'm just feeling super strange. There was like somebody like right behind me the whole way I'm walking. And I kept turning around. Nobody was there. I was like, what is going on? So finally I go downstairs. I'm like, okay, I'm going to see who this is that's doing this. Maybe my dad. My dad didn't do that much, but I thought, every once in a while he'd goof around. So I went down there, and I kind of opened up their rooms one by one, and they're all in there sleeping. My dad, my mom, and my little brother. And I was like, at this point, I'm like, okay, hang on, because I'm wide awake. I'm not dreaming at this point, because I could hear footsteps when I was awake at this point. I was like, I know I'm hearing this stuff. So I was like, okay, maybe it's an animal or something, but it sounded like footsteps. So I went back up and I looked around. I think I turned some lights on. I'm like, and it felt a little different. I didn't feel like somebody was looking at me anymore. I was like, what? I was like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just, I just sort of blew it off. I'm like, I'm just going to go back to bed. And I kind of remember that being it, like the first time. And then, the next day, everything was normal, and that night, I went to bed again, and I started hearing these damn footsteps again. And this time I was like, okay, I'm going to really pay attention and try to figure out what this is. And this time I yelled, Dad, do you hear that? What's going on? And there's no answer. I guess they couldn't hear me. So I get up, and I'm talking to whatever this thing is. I'm like, who are you? What are you doing? Because it felt like it was a person, but I wasn't really wrapping my mind around it. And then I could almost feel like something touching me, and then I could hear footsteps all the way at the other end of the hall, and it sounded like they were coming closer to me, like it was different. It was like with purpose, almost, like this time, like not in an evil way, but it was like they really were meaning business, and it unnerved me, and I said to myself, okay, there's something there. I don't know what it is. So I just ran for the staircase again, and I'm yelling at my dad. Caught my lungs this time, and I woke up everybody up, and And I remember saying something to him, and my mom doesn't remember this at all. But I said, there's something upstairs walking around, and I remember yelling it, and I'm like, are you guys doing something? I said, and my dad worked pretty hard. He always did. And he was always tired. And I just remember him like, just go back to bed. And I'm like, well, I'm not sleeping up there. And they're like, David and Mike, whatever you want to do, So they went back to bed. And I never went back up to sleep in that room. The rest of the time we were there, I slept on the couch downstairs or something. And I could hear a lot of sounds, but it was never as kind of menacing, and demanding as I'd heard when I was upstairs. But I was done with that. And I did ask my mom a little bit about it. And after she said that she was funny, she said she didn't remember me even saying anything, which I remember clearly waking them up and saying something. But when I asked her about it, I said, well, did you ever notice anything strange there? And she said she thought it was strange. She said it seemed like there was a lot of bedrooms and the garage was slanted really weird right underneath the house. And she said that there was something, she goes, in some ways there was something weird about the bedrooms and that was kind of strange. She actually texted that back to me. So it was like she acknowledged that there was, but they never, I don't remember them ever going upstairs really, except when we first moved in. So they weren't up there a lot anyways. But the last quick thing with that house was, after I gave up sleeping up there, me and my brother were like roaming around outside, and they had this little shed outside of it. And we went in there, we're like looking around because they left some junk in this shed, and they had like a little cellar door there. Well, because some people had nice basements, but a lot of people just had like little crappy, kind of gross cellars that they would go into for emergencies and tornadoes. And so we went over and we opened it up, and this was a little hard to explain too, but we opened the cellar door up and it looked really deep and dark. And we heard the weirdest sound coming out of there. We both, I remember, looked at each other and sprinted out of there. Again, I'm pretty much 100% sure it wasn't an animal making that sound, plus the door was shut. So I don't know how someone had got down there, but it was like, there was something in there that was angry that we had opened the door, and it was like this weird dread came over both of us. And we talked about it a little bit right after that, because I remember asking him, I'm like, what was that? He's like, I don't know, but I'm never, ever, ever going into that shit. Me either. So I don't know what happened at that house either, but there was clearly something walking around upstairs with me 2 nights in a row that didn't seem happy that I was there. It didn't look like it wanted to do me in, but it was like it wanted me to know it was there, and maybe for me just to move on. So yeah, I don't know.
See, but Ron, you're not that weird or funny after all, because your mom admitted the fact that she thought there was something kind of strange about the bedrooms.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that had to feel
really
good.
hoping...
That kind of probably made you feel a little bit better about things, right?
It did. After she sent that and said she did think there was something kind of strange about the bedrooms, I didn't follow up with her, but she put that all in caps. But then again, she's not that great with typing stuff.
Right.
So sometimes she doesn't box it, but everything else was regular. But she did put in caps, there was something in all caps, and then about it was lowercase, and she put bedrooms was kind of strange. That was all in caps. So it's like she was trying to point out that I don't know.
Wow. See?
Yeah. And I really was hoping I would get that address from that place, because that one I really thought that there was my personal opinion is that there was some sort of ghost up in that room that was perfectly happy being up there by himself and wasn't enjoying the company that I was providing. So,
well, it's just, it's a shame because you have these massive houses, and it's funny because you're like, wait, so you want the entire upstairs to yourself? You can't just pick one bedroom, right?
No, yeah, I was a pretty, organized and well-mannered kid, so I don't know why, but yeah, it was one of those things that it was beyond like it being something else. Like, a lot of those houses had weird heaters and things that like, they come on, they're honk. It wasn't that. It was footsteps, like, and they were coming closer. You can tell when somebody's walking. It was upstairs, so it was wooden, so it really made a loud, obvious sound when you would walk. Whenever I'd walk, even like barefoot, it was like creak, creak, creak. But when with shoes on, it was like real. And that's what it sounded like. It was almost like someone's walking around with boots or shoes on their feet. But it was steps. I have no doubt that that's what it was. And everybody was sleeping, so there was. It didn't make any sense to me. To this day, I don't really know what that was either. But
and from my last comment, it wasn't about you taking over the upstairs. It was about that thing. It was claiming the entire upstairs and couldn't let you just have one room, which is interesting because in your biological father's farmhouse, that thing seemed to claim, the room that your father had bestowed upon you. And was kind of saying, this is mine, and you will not be sleeping here ever again, which was fine by you, it sounds like, which I cannot blame you.
Yeah, I just remember like just sleeping on an uncomfortable couch for the next 3 or 4 weeks that we were at. I was very glad to leave that place. But that was, I've lived in a lot of houses ever since then, and I can't recall any other experiences throughout my life. So I'm not like one of these people that just, every other week I have a ghost chasing me. These are like real weird things that happened when I was younger, and I've never had anything weird or strange happen after that that I can recall. I mean, maybe I'll have something will trigger something else, but it kind of feels like that was it. Were those 3 very strange things.
Now, Ron, have you looked into, and I know you, like you kind of said, you're just kind of starting this journey and everything, but have you looked into probably especially that first incident with the alien-looking entity or creature in the driveway? Have you looked into any other experiences or sightings in that area that may corroborate what you saw?
Oh, I had never thought about doing that because this is a really small town in Missouri. Where the first one, that one that you were just talking about, that was just kind of in the outskirts of a little tiny town called Drexel, Missouri. It's like a typical map dot, it's very small. And when my dad, my real natural father, bought the other place, it was kind of on the other side of town, but it was also on the outskirts. So it was in that same vicinity of Drexel. So they were both there, but I never thought about researching that type of thing, but that's kind of where I'm at now. I think I want to start with the houses. And I mean, my grandparents' house, I know exactly where it's at. I can easily look that up and kind of try to see what maybe the history was with that. The other 2 are going to be a little trickier because I don't know if my natural father remembers, where that house was, right. Or, because I would really like to find out with that one and the other one in that little town called Butler. I'd like to do some research on them. But yeah, that is something that I'll add to my my investigative list, I guess, is besides those exact locations, is there anything else in nearby? And there's some people I can talk to also that I still have some contact with from those time frames. And I'd like to talk to my little brother too about that last the last one, because he was with me. We ran around a lot together back in those days. The first 2 I was just alone, but the last one, there was some people there, my parents and my little brother. So I want to try to do some follow up at this point and see if I can, make some more sense out of these things.
Yeah, as much as you're comfortable with reaching out to people, I would. Because I do believe that most of them probably have more experiences and, than maybe they're willing to say, which is unfortunate because you can't make them say anything if they don't want to, but it's at least worth a shot. And then I'll do the same thing because I am kind of interested to see around Drexel, Missouri, if I can dig anything up. But the good thing, like I said in the beginning, another good thing about doing this on a podcast like this is that I always get people reaching out and going, hey, there's this or that, here's this article, or I had an experience, which is always the white unicorn that we're looking for, right? Is an experience that's very, very similar to yours. So I implore everybody to reach out if you have any information on any of these areas, similar incidents. Did you have one? Even better, get in touch with me. Shannon at intothefrayradio.com. Well, Ron, I feel really honored to be with you on whatever this path you've kind of started to walk down. And I really thank you for choosing me to share your story with.
Yeah, I'm really, this was sort of a poor man's therapy session, I guess, because I've got to get out a lot of stuff that I've always wanted to. And honestly, I thought I'll probably, I think most of yours seem like they take an hour or so when I've watched some of them, and I thought, I got like 10 minutes of stuff, it's not going to, but I just looked at the clock. I'm like, it's been almost an hour that we've been talking.
You know what? So, you hit it on the head, Ron, because I really do feel like most people feel that way. And people will actually put that in emails and messages to me like, I don't really, it's probably not going to be it's not going to be enough for a show. And then we're almost always on for at least an hour because things come up, like there's questions that pop into my head. And most of the time people are probably rolling their eyes at my questions, but if I have it, then maybe one other person had that question, but no, that's spot on. I think a lot of people do not reach out to me because they feel like I don't have enough for an episode, but you do. You really do.
Right. Yeah. I guess what I would say now that this is the first time I've never done a video. I've never done any social media. I'm just, kind of average person. So you're my first thing like this I've ever done, first podcasting thing. So I would say if anybody's listening that's like me, that was nervous and, thought that this would be scary or whatever to get it out there, this actually has been really cool for me and a little, I just feel better after doing this. And I guess I'm officially now in I don't know what you'd call it, the Shannon's army of believers.
Well, thank you. That is awesome. And I'm so glad to hear that it wasn't quite that painful. I'm glad to hear that you already feel better about getting it out. So that is awesome. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was really fun talking about all this with you and I just feel unburdened. So yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we'll continue to stay in touch because I really am going to look into some of these areas that you've mentioned. And I know that I will get correspondence and I will forward it to you. It's up to you if you want to, talk to people. That's always up to the guest. If they want to, pursue any contact with other people that get in contact with me, because I can't always vouch for everybody, obviously. But I know that you'll be getting some comments about this and input, which will be amazing because I do have some really awesome listeners. So,
thank you,
Ron. Thank you so much. We will be in touch, and I hope you have a really very Merry Christmas.
Oh, you too. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. I've been to such and such a college. I've done these things in my profession. I produce a little fire. Buddha says, forget it. That's not true. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. Well, nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. But then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the koans to get you to come out of your shell and find out who you really are. suddenly become somebody different, living somewhere else. They will say reincarnation means this, that if you sitting here now are really convinced that you're the same person who walked in the door half an hour ago, you're being reincarnated. If you are liberated, you will understand that you're not. The past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. There is only the present. That's the only real you that there is. The Zen master Dogen put it this way. He said, spring does not become the summer. First there is summer, and then there is spring. When you settle down in the train to read your newspaper and so on, you are not the same person who a little while ago left the platform. If you think you are linking your moments up in a chain. And this is what binds you to the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. A master will say to somebody, now get up and walk across the room. And he comes back and he says, where are your footprints? They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.